Welcome to the spot. It's time to ignite. Oh yeah. Operation Hangout. The feeling's just right. Chilling with the crew. We're ready to groove. Opinions flying high. Come on, let's move. Woo. Hang out all night long, all night. Laughing and debating, playing our song. Oh yeah. Share your thoughts, don't be shy. Don't be shy. Operation Hangout, let's reach for the sky. Let's fly. Pull up a chair, let's get in the zone. Voices blending smooth like a funky trombone. Oh yeah. Topics from the heart, making us think. With a twist and a shout, raise up your drink. Cheers! Hang out all night long, all night. Laughing and debating, playing our song. Oh yeah. Share your thoughts, don't be shy. Don't be shy. Operation Hangout, let's reach for the sky. Let's fly. Bring it down, shake it up, feel the beat. With every word we share, the circle's complete. Living loud, think it proud, that's what we do. Oh yeah. Join the club, come on through, we're waiting for you. Alright. Hang out all night long, all night. Laughing and debating, playing our song. Oh yeah. Share your thoughts, don't be shy. Don't be shy. Operation Hangout, let's reach for the sky. Let's fly. Hang out.
Let's try this again. What's going on, everybody? We're back at another live, another stream. You know where you're at. You're at. If I can talk, Spartan Execute Network. I am your host, the Spartan, aka Peter. How is everybody doing tonight? So tonight's topic is going to be, let's say, down a rabbit hole of what if. This has been going around the Star Wars community as long as I can remember. What if Luke Skywalker joined the dark side? This conversation has turned into arguments, to scream matches, to you name what. It's one of those things you don't want to bring up to a hardcore Star Wars fan, because if you did, you're going to probably have a big argument on your hands. Absolutely. It's one of those things that we don't really talk about. It's something that you just leave alone. But you know me, guys. This conversation nobody wants to have, I'm going to have. Because it's one of those things. All right, guys, I got some new rules on. I want to go over them. Because we had some issues in the past. Here are the new rules for the join the streams. The other rules are still apply. So if you want to join the stream, there's no smoking on camera. There's no eating on camera. You must dress appropriately, and your camera must be on, and your microphone must be on. Those rules are not negotiable. I will be dropping a link in a little bit. So let's remember, those rules are here for a reason. I don't want to hear buts, ifs, or muts about it. There is zero exceptions to that rule. So, and here are the original rules. There is no personal attacks, issues, sexual language, race language, any of that stuff, I will kick you off. Very, very simple. So we all know Luke Skywalker as his ultimate good guy, but we know as his father, Anakin Skywalker, as his, I didn't want to say call him even a what was it called a Jedi. I call him a great Jedi because he flirted with the dark side, and obviously we know the dark side won. But he also flirted with the good side mostly. He was fighting it back and forth. But if he was a great Jedi, I don't think he would fall for the dark side. But the question is, let's say it was a way to convince his son when he was very weak at that point, mentally. I'm not talking about physically. Mentally, when he found out, they'll say, "Luke, I am your father." All right, I can't do it as good, imitation like that. But if David was on, he probably can do a lot better than I can. But if he was turned at that moment at an Empire Strikes Back at Cloud City, I believe it was, what kind of storyline will we have? I have more than several videos. This conversation has been going on for years. It makes me think. You always have those what if stories or different timelines, and Star Wars is not one of those one of those properties that does what ifs or what's the word I'm looking for? Ultimate's timeline. It's like, hey Eric, what's going on, my man? Definitely post that in the fan zone. I think this is a conversation you're going to enjoy. Let me ask you a question, Eric. You're a big Star Wars fan. Have you ever had a conversation? What if Luke Skywalker went to the dark side? And if you did, how bad was the argument? So how would it turn out if Luke went to the dark side? What if he did join the Empire? What if, even better, he joined his father and taking the Empire down for good? Not like this cheesy comeback story we got in the Rise of Skywalker. That's a whole conversation. But let's say he did turn. That is the question of the night. I think this story would have turned something like this. Like I said, I would see him teaming up with his father, going to the Empire, saying to him, "Oh, I turned my son, blah, blah, blah," having a conversation, been going dialogue for a while, convincing him he is a Sith Lord now. But remember, in Star Wars law, in the Sith, it says only one can be a Sith and only one can be an apprentice. Not like the Jedi. Excuse me. That is one, you can't have a Jedi Master, a Grand Jedi Master, a Jedi Master. Okay, Paul, great. I'll see you in a few minutes, my man. You have the Grand Jedi Master, the Master Jedi's, the Jedi's, then an apprentice. It's a permanent, like think of like knights almost. All right, but in their case, they can't have multiple. After you're done training one apprentice, you can take one down the road, another one, and so on and so on. Well, me by so on, but so on. Let me clarify that. You could have multiple apprentice, not all once. Once one's done training, he's moved on to Jedi level rank, not level rank, because they go by ranking here, like the military. Think of it. Once they go Jedi ranking, you can apply, or ask, I should say better, for another apprentice. And that is what makes this law very interesting in my eyes, because it's different between Sith and Jedi. Two different god properties, two different things. And a little backstory: the Jedi's and Sith were friends at one point. They were cool. They were like, "Yo, they pat it up, man." They went out for drinks. But something happened. Like, I don't bring politics up in my channel. You guys know that. My rule is my rule. But like a politics, almost think of it, is yay, nay. Like a little history lesson, guys. Most people don't know this, but the Republican and Democrat was one party till they disagreed and split into two different parties. Not politics, it's history lesson. Similar case, the Jedi's and Sith were one at one time. We got a comment from Eric. I'm actually very excited for this one today. There was a bit of disagreement between Yoda and Obi-Wan. Spirit that for Hondo, I'm positive if I'm pronouncing that. The possibility of Luke being turned when he fell off Cloud City, and that's true. It was a disagreement between those still. And if you guys remember, in episode 1, when Yoda saw the future was clouded. It did not give a straight answer like, yes, he is the chosen one. They knew he was the chosen one, but the future of clearness was. Here's the other argument I want to bring up really fast. Who do you guys think was the actual chosen one? I personally think it was Anakin, because if you see the storyline, he destroyed the Jedi. Horrible thing. Killed a bunch of younglings. Then I shall executed, really not, the K word. Then he joined the Sith Lord. Then he turned back, but he was the one who he said to him, "See ya, dude." Threw him off the top of the, I guess, the tower. I guess it was in the middle of the Death Destroyer, Star Destroyer, the second one. But we know he didn't die there. But peace was founded for years and years. Ours, you have, the New Order coming up, and that twists the story around a little bit. If you go by the original storyline, yes, he was I think he was the chosen one, no matter what. I don't care how you break it down. And that's a tricky answer to go by. Let's forget about the new ones. But if you go by the original 6 movies, that was it for the Empire. And I don't think George Lucas was planning on bringing him back, the Empire. I think that's it. When he was thrown off, that's it. You're done, by. Wash your hands and let's move on from that. But again, Disney is Disney. I'm not getting that conversation today, but we are going to get that conversation today. Who would have Luke Skywalker become if he joined the dark side? What kind of name would he have? Would he have Death Sight or Dark Star or something else like we already know? That is the question. And it's a multiple question here. Like, what kind of abilities would he have? What kind of powers of the dark side would he master? What training would his father give him to become his apprentice? What would the Empire be when Vader and Luke took over? Because they know they're going to take over. Not if they're going to take over, is when they take over. That was the question. So, what about Leia now? Leia, will she step up and join their forces? Or will she still be a part of the resistance fighting back? Let's play double advocate here for a second, guys. Let's say on one hand, you have Leia fighting the resistance. They were going to lose. With no Jedi coming at your way, there is no way you would have won that fight. But in the other hand, she might have returned like, yo, this is our father. This is the path he wants to take. You need to join us. If they were able to convince us, the stories it would get out of those timeless. I think that would have been a different stuff. The question also you need to ask yourselves now is how would the not yeah the rebels survive without a hero? Let's be honest. Luke was their hero they were looking for, their survivor, the man they wanted. How would they survive without Luke Skywalker? Because Vader on this side is the most powerful villain in lore of Star Wars at that time. The only person holding him back was Luke Skywalker, because when they go at it, there is no way anybody would have won that fight. No way. I don't care who would you put against there. So, all right, let's get done. Oh, shots fired. Leia would not turn. She would assume the role that Luke, if he was turned, not killed on Cloud City. I disagree there, and I have a video to prove that theory. If there's been stories that Leia did turn at one point. I know this is a what if scenario, but the what if scenario makes sense. I think he would have turned her. The only person who could get through to her was her own brother. You have to keep that in mind, Eric. Not even what's his name? Han could get to her. That's the other question. So you have a multiple scenarios here. Could Han Solo stand against Sith Luke? Or would he try and be chopped down, in other words? Or could we remain this general he became over the years? I don't think Han would have had any chance, even Chewbacca. I think their hands will be tied, be way, way too much for them to deal with. Now here's a catch-22 also. If Luke did turn to the dark side, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes, guys, as I'm going over this. I'm just going to go over some few pointers we're going to go over tonight, and I'll go over with Paul and the guys when they come in. And this is a good question for you, Eric. Oh, hang on a second. You are banging your stays on what? What am I? What I'm Beijing this on? Comic books, lore of books, storylines, and stuff like that, Eric. You're Star Wars fans like me. There are multiple timelines. Yes, Leia hates the Empire. I'm not disagreeing with that one bit. But she loves her brother more than anything. That's a catch-22. I think she would have turned. I think she would have turned. Not if, is when she would have turned. That is the question. Now, if Luke was the Sith Lord, right? He knew all the secrets of the rebellion. He knew the bases. He knew the codes. He knew every trick in the sleeve for them. Imagine what kind of power he could have held then. Imagine what he could do with that kind of information as a Sith Lord. That is a multiple question there. Now, Eric, think about it. Okay, I'll go to Leia thing to focus in. We're gonna have that conversation in a minute. If Luke was a Sith Lord, do you really think the rebels had a fighting chance? answer me that question. Did you think they have any fighting chance? I'm gonna tell you right now, no. I personally don't think they would have had a fighting chance. Again, like I said a minute ago, Luke knew all their techniques. They knew all. He knew his secret. He was in the deep, in those meetings, the strategizations, the missions. Again, I don't think he would have known how to. I don't think he would know what kind of information he had in his hands to his father to start talking to him like, "Yo, dude, we need to have a conversation, young man. Let's go." And that would have been a interesting conversation. And here's a question for you, Eric. Maybe, how will the galaxy view him now? A terrorist, a threat, or a survivor? All right, we agree to disagree. Leia would have had the granted of Obi-Wan's spirit to lead her to train with Yoda. I think Yoda would be dead. I don't think Yoda would have survived losing another apprentice. Because remember, he lost Anakin. That hit him hard. I don't think he was able, and he lost all those, the Jedi Order on top of that. And towards the end, when Luke found him, Yoda was already slowly dying in the balance of time. And when he came back, he's like, all right, let's get this first guy in here before I, take too much of this stuff. All right, guys, let's get my little, where's this thing? Oh, my little helper, of course. Baby Gru's in the house. Burley, you know the rules. Turn them on.
I know the rule, but you know the rule too. I ain't no
I
group.
don't care,
I've
David.
been
I'm
telling you.
serious. After the last stream, I'm not having this anymore. Nobody's
Really?
allowed on
I'm not
here.
having no one call me
David,
group.
I'm
'Cause
not
I'm not
having
a
this
group.
conversation on live. This is the
I ain't
rules.
skinny.
We are sticking to them. We had this in our meeting.
No problem. But I'm not a group. I'm too damn skinny to be a group.
David, I'm not having this conversation right now. All right, bro, man. Star Wars.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. How you doing? Thank you. I am kind of grouchy
You know
right
I'm
now,
gonna
but there's
play
some
it in a
people.
minute, so just go with it. You know that.
Yeah, because there's some people in my house is sick, so it make me grouchy sometimes.
Grouchy. Have you met yourself?
I think it's something like food poisoning going on. Like you buy food from the wrong
It's that time of
store.
year because the thing about it, the last couple of days has been fucking freezing my nuts off going to work. But I don't want to pop out of the jacket. It was way too early for that. And today was like 90 degrees. The weather has a lot to do with it.
I don't know. All I know is this. These days, you gotta be careful where you buy your food from. If you're not careful,
That's a conversation for a different stream. That's a conversation for a different stream. All right, David. I know you're not a big Star
I
Wars
know.
fan, and me and Eric are a little bit disagreeing right now. What if Luke Skywalker turned to the dark side?
Hmm.
And this has been an
If
argument
he
in Star
joined the
Wars
dark
community
side.
for years.
No, because I've heard the debate about that thing from afar, and I trying to understand because I'm not heavy on the Star Wars. I wish I could because if I was, I will be nerding out and I'll be going into detail. But
You have no
what
idea
I
what you're saying.
understand, if Luke would join the dark side, phew, the variable that I know and understand how to sell. Yes, his father was in the dark side. He was really different. It's like the same debate when they brought about what it meant was the red sun. It fall in that same category. That would be the case. If I'm wrong. But they had to be variable because one, if Luke Skywalker was in the dark side, but didn't you almost join it at one point? I remember the old movie. He almost joined the dark side. He met his father.
He was tempted,
Yeah, he was tempted. He almost joined.
not to
And
join, to strike down the Empire. But if he struck them down, he knew that it will lead him to the dark side. But he never did.
I know. But here's the thing. Whew, I'm trying to see what to step on. This is Mandrell turf right now. Where's Mandrell where he's hiding? Your honeymoon season over.
Not according to
I'm
him.
trying to think. It is very, very, very unique discussion. I remember watching the movie when I was much younger when he was infiltrating the Empire just so he could take him down. But when he found out that Darth Vader was actually his father, there was some kind of mental battle going on because when you connect to the Force, from what I understand, the Force is not no regular entity. It's not. It can be neutral, but it is not regular.
So the Force,
So
it depends who controls it. Because you have three type of Jedi's. Remember, we went over the last show. We have the Jedi's, we have the Gray Jedi's, and we have the Sith Lords. Depends on the user of the Force. He can take it in what direction he wants to. The dark, obviously, the light side of the Force has their own abilities. Dark side have their own abilities. The Gray is in the middle.
I don't know. I'm trying to get a real lockdown what to say on this because this is the Palpatine also treated Vader like an expendable access in favor of turning Luke. That is true. I remember the movie they were trying to replace Darth Vader with Luke, but the unlimited potential he had about his father. Darth Vader, I ain't gonna front. You're not gonna be like, wait, I sacrificed how much of my life I betrayed by order just for you, till you want to replace that thing come off real shady. But if Luke were to join the dark side, did a couple of variables that had to be in place for that to happen.
Mhm.
Because, like I said, when I think about it more, I think about that debate when they say if Superman joined Superman with the Dark Sun. That was one part.
I'll
I'm
give you,
sure they have to
I'll
be
give you
some
my
couple.
scenario second, David. So Luke, when he met him at Cloud City, Vader, when he fought him, right?
Uh huh.
I think that's the perfect time to turn him because he was still trying to master his abilities at the moment, right? That's one. Two, his mind was very weak at the time. So if he's going to crack him, it was that time. All right, guys, let's jump. Please rise for our president. Mr. President, how are you doing tonight?
A bit tired, but I'm here. What's good, guys?
Well,
I'm
we're
trying. I'm trying to figure out the variable because to get someone to turn or be a part of something, they have to have certain variable bottom line. That's what I'm aware of. But
we're,
that
we're
is
going to have that
not the
conversation in a
case.
second, David. So, look, I mean, Luke, Paul, did you think Luke would have turned to the dark side?
Well, there were a couple opportunities certainly within the franchise, and again, I'm going to limit this to the Star Wars universe, obviously before Disney bought it, and centrally, I'm going to surround it with the within the six movie franchise with a couple of
I
offshoots of
agree.
that. So yeah, I'll keep the conversation there. There were a couple opportunities where he was sort of at the door. I mean, obviously, we all know what happened with Empire Strikes Back. Where Vader reveals himself to be his father and whatnot, and certainly what his grand plan was to certainly, in the perfect, in the law of Sith, so to speak. You kill off the Emperor. Vader gets elevated, and then Luke becomes his apprentice. So you keep that order of two going. So there was an opportunity there where he had to really contemplate some things, and Return of the Jedi, where he lashes out after Vader threatens Leia, and he takes him down, and is at that precipice again, where he's almost at the in where the Emperor makes a persuasive argument that Luke, kill his father, and his turning to the dark side, which was certainly Palpatine's objective. So it's weird. So it's like Vader wants to take out Palpatine, and Palpatine wants to take out Vader, because Vader never was as powerful as he was. He never was what he possibly could have been because of the suit. So here you got Luke, who basically has no injuries except for the hand or whatever, that he could do a lot more with Luke than he ever do with Vader. So it's like both Vader and Palpatine both had similar designs for Luke. So I think he met that. He was at that point of decision a couple different times, and if something went left or went right, it could have went either way. And then there was another. If I expand the Star Wars universe a little bit more, there was a series that came out I think it was 1996 was the first. It was the Dark Horse Comics came out with a series of books, Shadows of the Empire. And in that comic, Luke basically tries to, in an attempt to take on not only a crime syndicate, but also to take out Palpatine, because apparently Palpatine survived. Somehow his spirit survived the destruction of the second Death Star. That he flirted with the dark side then. Where it was like, yeah, did he actually turn? He got real close. He submitted himself to be an apprentice of Palpatine in order to, I guess, gain some insights in an effort to destroy Palpatine. So it could have went either way. So he's flirted with it on more than one occasion, certainly in the movies and certainly in the, like I said, the Dark Horse comics, which was very popular and a well-received series at the time. And again, like I said, I would highlight those because I think anything within the Star Wars universe at that time, George Lucas had a lot of creative control over what you could and couldn't do. So the fact that, so again, I think of any works that was done in that time period when Lucas still owned the franchise, I kind of put that as canon. And so,
yeah. So I will ask you a question here, because me and I were kind of butted heads a minute here. And I asked this question when I first started the stream tonight was, do you think he would have turned Leia if Luke was on the dark side? I think yes, eventually.
Well, Leia wouldn't. I don't know if Leia wouldn't have had any. I would probably lean yes to an extent, because who would train Leia? Like, she had no training whatsoever. I mean, the whole, Rise of Skywalker intimated that she was trained as a Jedi. But again, who would have been it? So Luke would have been turned. No, Yoda's gone. Ben is gone. Who would she have learned to even encounter her powers? Because at the end of Return of the Jedi, she wasn't even aware, outside of knowing that Luke was her brother, that she even had these powers. And even in the franchise up to that point, she didn't even demonstrate that she had them. So it would have been,
if anybody trained her, it would probably be her father or her brother. That's
unless now, certainly with the prequel trilogy, right? Like I said, I'm not gonna include the sequels.
Okay, I think we should put a rule tonight. I'm sorry to cut you off. We're not going to add anything from 7, 8, or 9 because they are two different timelines almost.
So
two different story. I'm sorry to cut you off again. Different storyline. I apologize.
So again, according to the prequels, or just what we understand of the Force in general, the role of the Force is to always bring balance, one way or another. Mm-hmm. And apparently, Anakin was born of the midichlorians, right? The Force basically created Anakin to be, and you asked the question earlier, and I know we had a show earlier on it, who was the chosen one? And I think I think if I recall from that panel, most of us thought it was Anakin, not Luke, because he ultimately destroyed the Emperor and brought balance to the Force. Mm-hmm. So if he was birthed out of the midichlorians, if the situation got that bad, that again Luke is gone and whatnot, then I think the Force or the midichlorians maybe would have done something else, or birthed someone else. Just like, if I wanted to give the sequels, I know we're not talking about it in detail now, and I won't. if I was to give the sequels some benefit of the fact that Rey was able to advance so quickly, possibly could be that of the midichlorians, because again, the whole idea is Luke is off the scene, he went AWOL, and we need to raise someone very fast, advanced, or whatever, just to be this person. But the Force, from what I understand, always will try to bring balance, and if it has to do it out of thin air, it will do so in order to make sure that even if Luke and Vader's overturned, even if Luke turned, or if the threat of even Leia was going to turn, then something would have happened. Either they would have did something with Leia to advance her powers in, she got to hold some holocrons or something like that, or someone else would have been raised to counteract what the Sith were doing. But at no point in time it seemed like the Force was not going to allow evil to just go unchecked. And so somebody would have came up, whether it be Leia or somebody else. But certainly just looking at the roster, there weren't a lot of people, unless you found some Jedi scattered, some ex-Jedi who somehow came in contact, or the Force reached out to them to get something.
And that's a great possibility.
It's possible, but she would have had to have somebody. I mean, certainly she couldn't have relied on. And again, we also know from the sequels that Luke trained her. So,
So I'm gonna play the first video because it goes right into our conversation we're having tonight, and I found a lot of information about this what if scenario. So let me play the first one. Here we go.
If Luke Skywalker, the beacon of hope, were to succumb to the allure of the dark side, imagine a world where the son of Anakin Skywalker turns away from his Jedi training, ignited by anger and resentment, the blue blade replaced by a crimson glow, as Luke Skywalker embraces the darkness. Joined by unexpected allies, he leads the charge to reshape the galaxy according to his own vision. A clash of titans as he faces his own father, Darth Vader, once his mentor and now a fierce opponent. Friendships strained, loyalties shattered. The galaxy trembles under the rule of the dark Skywalker. Even those closest to him can't escape the darkness that now surrounds him. In a battle of wills, the apprentice challenges the master for ultimate control. A new generation rises, determined to restore balance and bring an end to the tyranny of the dark Skywalker. Subscribe for more alternate universe tales.
I want to say one thing, David, and you can go first, okay? Remember the law of the Sith before this, when it was one master, one Sith Lord, one apprentice, no more, no less. That is the law of the Sith Lords. But that has changed with the new Skywalker stuff. I'm not talking about the 7-8. I'm talking about Empire and all that stuff. Go ahead, David.
Now I have to agree with Paul based on there could be a balance. Now the what if it cannot be a what if the balance is not being respected, because I don't care what Disney say. George Lucas created this world, and he set a rule that they're supposed to apply. That being said, for Luke to be on the dark side, that means there's someone who will take his spot on the good side. So it's almost impossible you can tilt the balance to one area. Because based on the franchise of Star Wars, there has to be a balance no matter what. And like Luke Skywalker's father would have been the one who was put in the balance to be on the dark side some kind of way. Because when I watched the earlier movie, he looked like he was going towards that direction, and according to what Paul is saying, that could be the case. But for Luke to be pulled over, something had to twitch. So I don't think it would have been possible because of that fundamental that Paul brought up. Because when you look at any type of franchise, anytime you understand the system in place. I don't care if you're a fan or.
David, hang on 1 second. Somebody's playing music in the background. Can we lower that, please?
There's music in the background here.
I don't want to get.
Sorry, I apologize.
No, I don't want to get copy strike. That's the only reason I'm asking to do that.
Okay, because here's the thing. When I listened to the speech that Paul Bear talk about the Star Wars franchise, or what has to be a balance, it starts to make sense now because remember I tell you the Force is like an entity, right? You cannot force it to do your own will, knowing that this is beyond your understanding. So that being said, I don't think the Force would allow Luke Skywalker to join the dark side. Could be somebody else on their phone. I don't know what it is. Far from me. But what I'm getting right now, and I've seen that video, a person left out something. Because even though the movie sure he would look like he would have been, but the Force would not let it. Because if the Force would have let it, just like his father would, then he would have turned into that. But think about if he could have, who would have been replaced? Who would have been brought behind him? There was variable I'm trying to think about, and it looked as if it was a bloodline thing. Think about the movie. Anakin Skywalker would have found the Jedi side. He did not. He ended up going to the dark side, right? Isn't it ironic that the person who was supposed to tip the scale was actually someone from his bloodline? So, if that being said, if Luke were to join the dark side, then will be a repeat again that someone from his bloodline. Now, once again, the Luke Skywalker got a child. Will you ever concede to build a family? So there's too many. I don't know. There's too many. I'm being technical here, trying to make a solid argument. But understanding the Star Wars franchise and the logic behind it being played out, I'm not sure it would have ever been or would have been possible. Because Luke was trained by Yoda.
And
That
like
put it
I
in
said
perspective,
to,
though.
like I said to Eric earlier, let's say he turned a Cloud City. Yoda already know he was dying at that point. He wouldn't survive long enough to train Leia too. So it had to be somebody else's trainer if that was if.
And that's the thing. But the influence come to part when Luke make Yoda, I think that was still the deal. There was no
Did Luke Skywalker use
Sorry about that. Go ahead. David, you there? All right. I think he's frozen again. Go ahead, Paul. You want to take this?
Well, like I said, I know he was trying to make a case for, did Luke have an heir? But that's why I went back to Anakin. Like I said, Anakin, boy, understand, was born of the midichlorians. So what Luke even have needed an heir if the situation got
what was
that
Luke Skywalker?
would the
what if
midichlorians
Luke dark side?
make sure that he make sure that somebody from somewhere either again manufacture out of thin air or something like that, but somebody would step up in that case. At least from Anakin's story, that's apparently what happened. That's why he was brought into the world. So I don't know if Luke would have needed a son or an heir at that point in time. I think the Force would have done something.
Well, this is a scenario because I have a video I want to play first before we talk about a scenario. So let's say if it was a different way, maybe Vader raised him as a baby. Let's do that scenario. Just marinate that.
Hey, you muted.
Let's try this again. Let's marinate that for a minute as I'm playing this video, and tell me your opinions when we come back.
Can't hear it.
Skywalker was raised by Darth Vader. Vader felt it, the birth of his son. He searched every shadow of the galaxy and found the child on Tatooine. No mercy for Owen, no second chance for Obi-Wan. Vader took Luke in his arms and promised him the galaxy. Luke was raised aboard a Star Destroyer, trained in secret under Vader's watchful eye. No rebel propaganda, no Jedi teachings, only power, control, and obedience. And behind the mask, a father's twisted love. Luke Skywalker never saw his twin sister, never heard of Alderaan, never felt the light. And when the time came, he didn't save his father, he surpassed him. What if Luke Skywalker
Boy, you want to go first this time?
Hang on, look at Eric's comment. Obi-Wan's spirit was able to manifest. So I ask you all why Yoda's could not, especially when he did, in fact, do so at the end of Return of the Jedi. Again, if that's the case, and I'm not saying as far as the ability to Force Ghost, I'm not saying that's beyond his capabilities, but again, when has a Jedi ever been trained from a Force Ghost?
And that's the point too.
I mean, they come, on occasion, but again, the interaction and just even and when have you also seen a Force Ghost exude any Jedi powers? Like, could a Force Ghost Yoda raise his X-wing out of the swamp and on Dagobah? Could he have done that? We haven't seen Force Ghosts. They can make appearances. They can maybe give you some wisdom on something or some teaching, but I don't think they can manifest the same way as they can in their human or their physical forms. So I don't think that would fly. And again, I don't know of any case of any Jedi being trained by a Force Ghost. So I think that becoming a Jedi needs to be more than that. Otherwise, there would be a lot more Jedi trained in that. Or when the 66 went out, you would have had a lot more Jedi operating out of that. Now I know Qui-Gon was like, I think Qui-Gon was the first. I don't even know if that's true to say that Qui-Gon Jinn was the first Force Ghost that he learned how to become a Force Ghost. Or he was the first one. So yeah, I mean, to me that would be a stretch. Again, based on the canon and based on what we've seen in supporting works, that a Force Ghost could do the job as good, if not better, than someone live. But regarding the question of if Anakin was raised, if Darth Vader raised Luke from birth or from a very young age to be a Jedi, I don't know how we pull that off, because again, the Emperor clearly, through his powers, certainly recognized that these kids were they would have sensed the disturbance in the Force. So Anakin, I don't know how Vader could have hidden for all those years that he had his own son, raising him while trying to, keep that from Palpatine. I think that'd be a very hard. Raising a son is hard enough. Trying to keep that information from Palpatine would be even harder. I would think it would have to manifest in some of Vader's reactions, or that, Palpatine is very good at finding out motives of different people. So I would say that it's not likely that he could get away with it. Certainly from Palpatine's perspective, I don't know if he would have went on the missions, because again, he was essentially a servant of Palpatine to go out there and do all these missions. He was basically his hand, and went out there, and if he wasn't hunting other Jedi down, he was carrying out missions that Palpatine wanted. So if anything, he would have been an absentee father if that was the case. So yeah, I think that possibility, yeah, and I think I would agree with Eric as well, that yeah, there'd be no 4, 5, and 6 if that certainly if that in fact happened. And I don't think we would have got the whole redemption arc, which is really what Star Wars is. It's about the redemption of Anakin Skywalker. There wouldn't have been any redemption in that particular case unless, again, the midichlorians manifested somebody to come and intercede into that situation. And quite frankly, I don't know if Vader would have remained a Sith. Because again, his whole reason for going on with things was like he lost his wife, he lost his kid, whatnot. So I don't know, could him or the threat of Palpatine finding out, would he even stay with him, or would he would have tried to expedite his plan and get away from him? But I don't see how he could because again, the limitations of the suit. Palpatine would, Vader. There's no way in at least in a one-on-one confrontation could Darth Vader ever kill Palpatine. I mean, delete Palpatine. That just wouldn't happen. He's just too powerful, and there's limitations there. So yeah, maybe he would have been compelled to just get away from the Order altogether if he had Luke early on, and I think it would have definitely maybe given him another reason to live rather than just destroying everything.
David?
I have to agree with Paul Bennett about that because, like I said, he have a better understanding of the Star Wars franchise that I do. And as I'm listening to the argument, and I'm putting it in my head, I'm like, like I said, everything based on a variable. Because first and foremost, I don't see how that what if it let me know that person didn't take into an account that the Force can prevent things from happening. So, based on John Luke when he created the whole franchise, Darth Vader, even though he said that he had a son, the Force were making sure they don't meet him because he understands the level of influence. So you gotta put that in perspective. But it's like saying, what if you want to tell me in a realm whereby the particular entity that have supreme power over all being will just favor knowing that they're probably about and you don't have no control over it. You can tap into it, but you don't have no control over it. That being said, for Vader to be able to find his son before that part of the influence, the universe had to be tipped over to his favor on purpose. But that's not the case. And according to Bennett, the Force is also about having a balance. You cannot tip the balance in reality. I mean, when it comes to logic, I can't agree that would have been possible. I couldn't. Because if that's the case, then when it comes to selfish reasoning, then you expect things to happen a certain way how you think it would be. But I'm a logical thinker, so I don't know how that was going to work. To be quite honest with you, it doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. And of all the past movies that we have seen that had not similar storyline, but similar way of logic, whereby the particular realm have a unique way of keeping a balance in place. You can't tip the balance more to the one side. I'll give a perfect example: The Flash. If everyone watched the TV show The Flash, Flash did something that he was not supposed to do. He tipped the balance to his side. Because of that, it created a bunch of anatomy whereby they didn't realize it's all because of Flash doing.
But that's a little different too because it's the Flashpoint. We don't have any time jumping here.
I know.
Hey,
Let
me ask you guys something. Because I've heard this in other conversations as well when it comes to the Force. I mean, a lot of times we especially in the earth when the first movie came out, it was like this good versus evil kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the Force, from what I understand, if you look at it, in a bigger picture, it doesn't make distinction between good and evil.
No,
it just says you just need balance.
That's correct.
So even with the destruction, what we saw in Episode 6, that apparently Palpatine's wiped out, the Empire's wiped out and whatnot. Would the Force have insisted that there needed to be a dark Sith or something? I mean, if the idea is balance, not total good and everyone's happy and everything, if that has to be the balance of things, then would there have been another Palpatine or another Sith or somebody raised up in order to, because it seems like that seems to be the overriding mission of the Force is balance. And I would think it's between good and evil. And you can't have good without evil. I mean? You got to have something in place to keep that going. So what could we have seen another Palpatine or another Sith Lord or somebody coming up who would have taken over? I mean, we never did get George Lucas's vision for 7, 8, and 9, even though he had those stories prepared. But I would think that they would have had to have involved just like all great stories. And Eric made the comment about, basically Vader being like a Shakespearean tragedy. You would have to have something. Either the Emperor survives, or some other agent, or some other being or force or something that comes up, and that people are going to have to deal with. And
or
like,
the student.
yeah, he might have had like another apprentice or something. We all know about the Inquisitors from again additional canon sources and whatnot. So maybe somebody from there kind of comes up and tries to take over some things. And even I said, I mean, even if I was to borrow again a little bit from Episode 7, right? They tried. I mean, Luke started a new Jedi Academy. And Luke and Leia did get married. They had their son, and he basically got turned by Snoke or whoever it was. So again, it's like you can never quite have, too much of any one situation. At least according to that's
From
how the
my
stories.
understanding, the original script of Lucas' vision after what was it? 6, 7, 8. After 8, I believe was it? Return of the Jedi is 8, right, Paul? Or am I wrong here?
6.
6. Thank you. After 6, what was supposed to happen was Luke was supposed to rebuild the Jedi Order like he did with the Disney spin-offs. I call them spin-offs because technically they are spin-offs of the original story. And Leia was supposed to rebuild the Republic. And when she did, they kept those two, but nobody would have gone rogue on him like they did. Another Sith Lord would coming from the ashes, believing Vader was this magical being, and then you find his Star Wars, some similar case like that. As much like yin and yang, when it's evil, is always good, and when it's good, is always evil. The balance, like you said,
Right.
So you like it would be another lord there fighting somebody. The difference would have been with the original Jedi Order versus Luke's was, yes, you can have kids. Yes, you can get married. Yes, you can have attachments. Because those no attachments lead down to the dark side, like we saw with Anakin. If it was a different way out, like say it was Luke's version of the Jedi Order, yeah, he would have had a wife. And it would be, yo, cool, dude. I'm like, I'm proud of you. Man, your dick works great. And it wouldn't have been like, no, you can't have that. They're not they're not nuns or whatever they're called.
Yeah, they're not priests. I mean, or at least like that monks or whatever. I mean,
Monks. That's what we're looking for. Thank you.
Yeah.
They're not monks, and they are human beings. Even monks, I don't care. They have, man feelings. They're not getting fucking the dick chopped off like we're gonna fix them like dogs. So again, I understand they believe in whatever. I'm sorry.
That's a troubling visual, but I know. Go ahead.
All right.
You just have a way of just taking it to
the next level.
I don't know if that's even a level. That's like off the level. That's off the charts. But,
you know me, bro. But no, seriously, I was joking aside. It would have been very hard to say no evil. I would think is even he had Obi-Wan. Great example, Star Wars Awakening, the game for PS3, I believe. Vader had a freaking clone. And he didn't know it was a clone. He thought he was an apprentice. Maybe the Empire had another apprentice training in secretly nobody knew about.
Right.
Or all of a sudden, this new Jedi Order comes out and he comes from the ashes. All of a sudden, you see Jedi's getting slaughtered. They're like, what the heck is going on here? Because they're off guard. They didn't know what's happening. And this guy comes from the dark, all wearing all black. Like you look over, like Master Paul. Do you see that? Yeah, what is that? And your senses are going crazy. Like it's something evil. Sense of the dark side. Next minute he's attacking us. You're trying to defend yourself, but you're off guard. You know, no evil's out there anymore. Imagine that kind of storyline.
Yeah.
That's a big what if. It's not even what if, like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
It's more like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you just mentioned, we talk about Luke and again, some of the storylines that were done
Correct.
again within the Lucas universe. I mean, him and was that Mara Jade, I think was his wife. In the
I can
and
look it up. I can look it up.
so
Yeah.
yeah, so again, there was so much they could have done there with that because I know that was a very popular character as well. Because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, I think she might have been some sort of force wielder herself, or force sensitive at that particular time, Mara Jade. So,
Mary Jade Skywalker was his wife in the
yeah,
book series.
yeah. So I mean, that could have been something that they really could have explored. And again, we never got it. Like I said, Disney went in a totally different, direction. But yeah, I mean, um, it certainly would have been interesting to see what would have happened if Luke did make that turn. Who gets taken out first? Because again, I think the race would have been then between Vader and Palpatine. I think that you know their plans would have been expedited. It's just a matter of who's going to strike first. And I don't know how Vader would have gotten the upper hand because he never could up to this point. I mean, he was basically his apprentice for 20 something years and never could find quite the opportunity to take him out. And again, I just think, like I said, the limitations of a suit would have been such where he would have had to find someone else to essentially do the dirty work if he was going to have him taken out. Have a star destroyer destroy something like that. And even then, because one of the things with that Shadows of the Empire series that I talked about, actually, Sidious had clones made of himself. And at the end of the graphic novel, they go at it. Luke versus Sidious in Sidious's clone body. So you never know how that would have played out if they would have brought that to the live screen.
Bingo.
But I would have liked to, but that to me that's the most interesting because we already know Sidious's plan and we know Vader's plan, and it was to take each other out and using Luke to do it. So this is going to be definitely like a chess match to see who can get to Luke first, who's going to have the influence. Is Luke going to be loyal to his father, which certainly he would have an upper hand, especially if he took him and he raised him early. He would certainly have an upper hand in that. But would Palpatine even allow? Because even in the movie, in Empire Strikes Back, he said when Vader talked to him in Empire, he was like he could destroy us. So I think that even Palpatine recognized how dangerous Luke was in that particular situation. So he's always going to make sure that he has the upper hand. So again, that interaction, if Luke was kind of in play, that would have been a very interesting exchange. And then again, if you want to bring Leia into it and how she would have factored in, like I said, I don't know what allies she would have within the Force community. I'll just say that, who could come to her aid at that time, because everything seems to be so, at this point in time, everything was so linear in terms of lines of succession and who you got your instruction from. And again, I just don't think you take all the Force ghosts, Qui-Gon, Yoda, whoever, even and I just don't see who could step up to give her the training that she would need to then overcome an empire, which the rebels was barely hanging on with that. And then who would how would she confront that? That would almost be, it would have to be, like I said, somebody totally that we haven't seen that would have to come in and kind of save the day, if in fact we go with the edict of the Force always maintains balance. Someone else would have to do that, because I don't think she could in and of herself.
I also want to throw the monkey wrench because we were talking about their kids and everything a minute ago. Leia and Han had 3 kids, 2 twins named Jane and Jake, and then she had a third one named Anakin. The reason they named it Anakin, they wanted him to spend the most time with Obi-Wan Kenobi to train him the most, because he wasn't dead in this storyline. So that's a
Hang
different
on,
conversation.
hang on. You say Han and Leia,
Yeah, they had 3 kids in the story.
right? But
first
Obi
part.
Wan was already going to be taken out then. So how would he have come
There'll
to
be a
be?
different storyline, obviously. It'll be a
Okay.
different. It won't be like canon or anything like that. Just a little twist there. But let me ask you
Yeah.
guys another question here, really fast. Let's say Vader did train Luke. Would he train him to his equal or weaker?
Honestly, I don't think that is if he's going to do it in the Sith manner. I don't think it's from what I've seen. It's not up to the master to train his successor. I think from what we learned from Sidious and his training and whatnot, the idea was you train them to be certainly an arm of your. All right, take care, bro. Appreciate it. Um, I think that you certainly train them up to be a tool for your purposes. Whether or not they take the next level or not is like it's up to them. But I'm not. I'm not going to train. I'm not going to. Maybe you guys, since you come from a martial arts background or whatever, maybe you guys can relate to this a little bit. You know, I don't know. As a martial artist, is it your goal to train your successor? Like, do you train people
Yes.
to replace you?
Yes.
You say yes, but I
Yes,
don't know if that's
yes
across.
and no.
I don't know if
This
that's
is
across
how it
the board.
works. This is how it works. At least under my instructor, he would teach you everything you need to know for your next rank. Or let's say I got it to 9th degree black belt, right? And because he was a grandmaster, so that's a 10th degree. I would not receive my 10th degree ranking till after his passing.
Which means he didn't train you to beat him.
No, he would teach me everything I know, but he would not teach me to what's called, we were, we would train together and all that stuff, but not to the death like that. If that makes sense, you can't get promoted higher than some styles that you can promote somebody to your equal. So it depends on the style you talk about. My
So,
style
but
did
you,
not.
but you validated my point though.
Yeah.
Let me
question
let me
you
add to it.
raised
Let me add.
was, what if he trained him to be better? And
Let me add to that.
yeah,
It's a yes and no. But let me tell me about the yes and no. It depends on one, the dedication that particular student has become in that particular field. Because in every martial, especially in country karate, there are like four main houses: the Shitoryu, Shotokan, Shotokai, Okinawa karate, right? Based on those clan cultures, normally it's based within the family. Now, if they deviate from that particular teaching and they open up multiple branch, so to speak, then it lead down to two variables. One, the main house will have to be within the clan leadership, meaning bloodline.
Mhm.
It branches out there, it had to be done in a unique, significant way whereby you had to be trusted to follow the bylaws and that be implanted for that particular style and dojo. So it depends on the level of dedication, it depends on the level of consistency that apply to it. So yet, in some cases, you're training to find your next successor. If you don't find your next successor, then more than likely the next successor will come from the bloodline. Well, I'll tell you it's a yes or no situation. That's from the original martial art. Any else out there with more quote unquote, how would I say, generic? Because there's a thing that I'm being aware of for the past 20, 30 years that too many people claim they from a particular style. When you ask them where their origin from, they cannot even tell you. That let me know either they partake in martial art and they try and create their own style, so to speak. Like Jet Kendo. Everybody knows Jet Kendo. Bruce Lee came from, who originated from Wing Chun.
Mhm.
You can trace the origin. There are a lot of martial art out here. You cannot trace the origin because you can tell it's made up. So to speak. They will partake of a particular martial art dojo, but want to make their own style. So they refuse to mention where they're student of. Get what I'm saying? When I tell you it's a yes and no situation. Yes, you are trained to find your next successor. But at the same token, if you're not able to find your next successor, that next successor has to either come from the branch, the main branch, whereby they put someone down to take over your position. If you cannot find a successor for that particular door, that door is properly established. Just like a church. So it's a yes or no situation. I'm going to be more on the logical, legality behind that. That's how it would be. But when you break down the Tanakh concerning the Jedi and the dark, I have to say there's a system in place that you have no control of. That being said, if Luke was to switch, they continually plan to make sure there's someone to replace him. But since Luke was not going to switch, they continually plan to replace the last Dark Lord. It was bound to be. It's like a cycle. But when you mentioned Dark Lord, I remember we had a show talking about comic book and manga. Dark Lord comic book, I believe they have access to more Joe Lucas material. If you could have made it more in the comic book, it would have flushed out the storyline.
Well, remember, everything in that time, right? I mean, it was like it had to be like Lucas approved. So all the novels, Splinter in the Mind's Eye, that novel that came out, The Rise of Darth Vader, which is certainly I think the definitive book on Darth Vader. All those you had to get approval from George. So again, I thought that the Star Wars universe at that time, it had a very more cohesive line of storytelling. He didn't mind you expanding the universe, but there were certain rules that you couldn't cross.
Thank you.
And like I said, when Disney brought the franchise, they broke a lot of rules there. You know what I mean? So I think it got
they got rid of those rules.
Well, I'm just saying,
and this is why
it became a very disjointed property because of the because of that. But yeah, everything you had to go through George, and again, and this is again where I really I don't want to harp on this too much. I get upset because again, fans drove George Lucas out of Star Wars, and the fact that he did so much not only for his film property, for what he did for the community. The fact that he was, I thought, very generous in allowing writers and creators to go off and create stories and storylines. I was just even thinking about the lightsaber stuff. Like lightsabering became basically almost a martial art with the prequels, right? Because prior to that, I mean, you had lightsaber stuff, but certainly the prequels, say what you want about them. People talk about how bad they are. I don't believe that. But say what you want about them. They introduced that guy, Nick Gillard, who was the stunt coordinator for the prequel trilogy. He created essentially a martial art for lightsaber dueling. And you saw that in the preponderance of, and that was right around time when YouTube came on board, and you started having these fan films coming out with these guys who were martial artists and different people just amping up the sword play and the sword fighting and the acrobatics and all the things that were involved. Again, prior to that, even if you go to Return of the Jedi, it was basically just this, just back and forth and things like that. But
I totally agree on that one, 100%.
I mean, so you basically had a new, like Kempo, with the stick. That's what it's called, right? The kendo, the kendo stick. I mean,
a more kendo style well fighter because
thing. I mean, I mean, he brought so many elements into it. Yeah. So I'm just saying, so George gave, but so again, back to the creative, he created so much for so many people, and people gave him so much crap over the prequels that he did. I don't think, I think that took a lot of the life out of him, where he didn't really want to say, do I want to deal with a 7, 8, and 9? And now people are complaining about the status of the Star Wars franchise and whatnot. Well, again, I think the fans, for the most part, are the ones to blame for that. But the creativity that he gave to those guys was
more you bring this up, more you mention it, more it makes me tired to think. And I think you're right. Us Star Wars fans, I really don't complain about the franchise. I think it was good up to the new trilogy. I liked yes, I would say it could be more work on the original saber fighting. But they went from complaining about one thing. The next thing I heard them complain, the saber fighting looked like it was like a cross girl throwing wang wangs around. I'm like, no, if you don't think for a minute, Luke and Obi-Wan knew each other's moves. So every time they went to strike, they already down there, so they had to redirect the sabers. So if you have to think a little bit out of the box, like the guys did, it's always something nagging Luke is about something, and eventually he says, "You know what? I don't need this headache. I'll give this headache to somebody else."
Right.
I'll
Wow.
say this.
Let's
I would say that
say it on the
it's
next video.
the fact that you brought up how you say the fan base that made Joe Lucas to walk away from his franchise. It proved a point whereby I say I hate to say it, but sometimes the American audience don't know what's best for them until it's destroyed. This is why when we had that show on the Anime Unlock about comic versus anime, yes, these anime franchise have huge fan base. I'll give a perfect example. It's comical. I saw the feed on my Facebook yesterday. Demon Slayer surpassed Superman and one other movie. Plus, it's also surpassed Damon Wayans movie him, and he was pissed because they outsold him. But the thing about it, these anime franchise they stick to the creator idea, regardless what the fans say. They take the fan comment or complaint sincerely, but they also let the fan know we have to stick to the original storyline how it put to be played out because they are the creator of that particular art. Now, over here in the US, I believe Joe Lucas never sold it, but instead sat with a production company who willing to be faithful to the content, then there could be a high chance that the franchise could have been even greater than it is today.
That have
It
been
could have,
so.
because that would,
Yeah, but
cause that, no, no,
that's what but Disney sold him that. You don't know how these guys are going to take it.
Yeah.
Disney, everything was there. He had 7, 8, and 9. He had the scripts. Oh, everything is good. Carolyn Kennedy went in there,
what we see what's happening right now.
and she promised the moon to him.
And we see
And
what's
they
happening right
reneged
now
as soon
because
as
not
soon
only
as the
did this,
ink dried. That's when they reneged on the deal.
Because
and
the
then
deal
we
was
have
they're buying
a
their. Hang on, David. The deal was they were buying the franchises. So after the franchise is bought, they can do whatever they want. They can bury it to the ground if they wanted to.
But there's no way. I'm saying there's no way George would have sold the franchise if they knew they were going to do this.
Yeah.
So clearly, I'm saying they clearly made promises. Oh, we'll protect it. We won't do this and that or whatever. Oh yeah, you got 7, 8, 9. Cool. We're gonna run with that. And then it was like a 180. So I'm saying anybody can promise the moon in terms of, hey, we'll take care of it or whatever. But when you lose creative control, then that can happen regardless of I don't know. It could be Disney, it could be Fox, it could be whoever it is, because those are the only entities that can buy your stuff. Number one, I mean, fans weren't going to buy the franchise. Who else has got $4 billion to throw around? I mean, maybe some Saudi sheiks or something like that would maybe try to buy it. But you're talking about very powerful entities who are used to doing their own thing.
Hold on. Saudi just bought EA Sport for $55 billion. So EA Sport is no longer American. They just snatched that.
That's what Paul is saying. Saudis are able to afford that very easily.
Yeah.
If they want it, it fit their criteria because.
But also,
for them to buy EA Sport, they're really behind that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like they do business because of also their beliefs too. That's one thing they do. So I don't see them buying Star Wars because of their beliefs. But let's say they did. Now they could have even buried even more than it is now.
Or for find someone who understands the local way of producing the movie and say, you know what, we didn't like how Disney do this movie. When do we do the whole franchise?
David, you're missing a business practice behind, and I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying.
I understand the business practice. Let me apply the business practice. Because first and foremost, WWE will put to go a particular direction. But when they met with the Saudi, all of a sudden, whatever the Saudis say, they bend over backward to bend the rules on how they run business for the Saudi. That being said, knowing that Saudi had chunk of money to throw around, if they say you want to find me a director and a producer who go revitalize this franchise how it should have been, it's going to be done. Either you like it or you don't. You gotta think outside the box of a fan. Think outside as someone who's running a business. You don't buy a whole entire franchise just to bury it unless you have good intention. If you're from outside this country, meaning you want to build something and you like the nostalgia of the original movie done by John Lucas, not one done by Disney. So you want to have that flair back. You gotta have find someone who understand John Lucas mindset. Saying what because we build up here to get all new actor, all across, and we build a franchise from start to finish. This way, we're not doing all that walk them nonsense again. That's out the window. You stick to the storyline, you stick to the script, you stick to the plot. Yeah, I'm sure you have a better produced movie. This is what's going on in today. This is why I said before, I have no faith in the American movie production. Because whenever there's a storyline franchise put into the screen, and you have a huge amount of fan base that follow that particular franchise, two things can happen. Either you shit on the fan base thinking you don't give a fuck, you gonna make money. Now realize the fan can destroy you. And they follow the particular franchise, come to see it on a big screen, and you do it injustice. They're gonna say, you know what? We boycott it. You're not gonna make no damn money. Then guess who's at loss? Let
So
me remind you, Mike.
here's the thing. I'm going to back up 100% here. On the table, they agree, probably he was the best offer was that like, listen, we are our resumes speak for ourselves. Every franchise we do till before all this corporation
And that
shit
I
happened.
get it. That was at
Let
the
me
time
finish
based
it.
on the
Hang on,
offer.
let me finish. On the table, they said we will promise you we do this and this. But in a contract, it never said I have to follow it. The only thing I have to do is I'm buying the property for X, Y, and Z numbers. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day.
I
And then he
totally
said,
understand.
hang on, David. And then it's
Go
gonna
ahead.
like, now let's say Sony, another big probably said same thing with Spider-Man to Marvel. We will keep it to storyline. And what they did, they also buried the franchise, and they've been trying to do so many reboots. It didn't. It was very hard to find a hardcore fan saying like, "I'm gonna pay you $4 billion, and I'm gonna follow your story, and it's gonna be legit, and if it comes out great." Listen, I'm not saying
It-
all the Star Wars movies are great that Lucas did. There are a couple scenes, they were like, I
And
don't think
I
it's about
I
that.
totally understand the trip because deal happened from yet the time. And what I've been noticing by yet the time, a lot of these people didn't have people on their side to protect their IP. This where the IP protection thing got really, really deep as of lately. But it was what other people did to their own IP. For example, John Lucas sold his IP to the wrong production company that ended up making a shit show out of his franchise, a beloved franchise that established the American culture. That's number one. Sony, which is a Korean company, that they have a better understanding, but not realizing this is the American culture franchise. You don't just take, okay, we're going to do something with it and do something completely off the rail. That was a problem to it well. And funny, after they did that, guess what the ownership did? They said, okay, we're going to combine all three just to fix it up. So he did a multiverse version out of it. Okay, I get it. But because of what people have been seeing as of lately, any storyline IP that created a huge fan base, no one's willing to set out to just any production if they're not willing to put it in that line. You will stick to the script. This is why borrowing, renting IP, it become a thing whereby company can sue you now if you divert off the storyline. If you produce something that's not what we expected, then you will cough up some money. They put that in the fine print.
Uh-huh.
This
And
is something this
Marvel
is something
tried
I'm
to
being
sue,
honest.
yeah,
Go
Marvel
ahead.
tried to sue Sony about Spider-Man, and they lost. I lost it horribly.
Because of the language. We come to a contract negotiation. Me and Mr. Bennett know the very when we come to corporate America, white collar corporate. When you sign a contract, before you sign a contract, better read the fine print. You better read the fine print.
And I
So
bet you
if you,
$100 Lucas read all the fine print. He had probably one of the best lawyers in the world. But again, after you sell the franchise, it's out of your hands sometimes.
Yeah.
Same thing with Marvel. They've been trying to buy Spider-Man back for years, and Sony's not budging. They're not selling. They said, we're not selling Spider-Man. You like it or not.
And
and
it was,
they're poo-pooing on freaking Spider-Man horribly. I think we all three of us can agree on this right now.
and either way, they're both suffering from it because whatever money they put to make from Spider-Man, how they're supposed to make it, they're not making it as they wanted to make it. Right?
Yeah. All right,
Well,
let's get
I
back to
what
the
I
topic.
said.
Let's play the next video really fast.
What if Luke joined the dark side? What if Luke gave in to his anger and struck Palpatine down? Imagine Luke taking his father's place as the Emperor's new apprentice, wielding the power of the Sith. With Luke as a Sith, the rebellion could have been crushed. The galaxy might have been plunged into endless darkness. But would Leia, strong in the Force, rise to face her brother and restore hope? Would Luke have been the most powerful Sith of all time? Or could the light still pull him back? What do you think? Comment below.
That's another
Even that,
interesting.
even that video failed to understand the logic of the franchise. That is why I think.
What if Luke Skywalker?
I thought,
I'm sorry,
this is
Eric?
why I do it when fans throw their idea about certain things or what a creator created. I will ask myself the question: how much detail do you pay attention to the writer direction? Who wrote the script? Who wrote the idea of it? Because what if? I don't do what if I don't understand the person who created the franchise, what the direction is supposed to be. And remember, Mr. Benedict, the fourth is an entity that is all about focus on balance. To plunge the galaxy into endless darkness, that wasn't going to be. Because it's like saying, I don't give two shit about the almighty entity that surpassed me. No, I'm sorry. That's the flawed logic when fan make such fan base look into certain things that it don't stay in line. It's like saying, okay, this is how I feel. What if this? No. This is why I learned my lesson watching all my favorite anime and people do their what if, and I debate them on their logic behind, and I realize there's so many flaws because they just based on how they feel. I'm a logical thinker, so when you talk about movies or storyline, I stick to the logic of that thing. And whatever you say, whatever's going to happen, it don't fall within the logic. It fall off. Either we like it or we don't. That's why I'm saying, if Luke Skywalker did, what is the contingency plan behind that? Because remember, Darth Vader, aka Anakin Skywalker, sensed that his son was being born. He understood the Force, mind you. He understand there's a sense. He knew there will be a sense of balance being put in play. He knew that the Force would prevent him from finding his son. He knew his son would go to the other side. Either he like it or he don't. You can't control the balance on the universe if you're not a god yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, it's like saying you're controlling things beyond your means. So that's why when people do these fan base, I ask that question: what logic are you going based on?
So are you saying Leia would have probably stepped up and take over the Resistance?
They would have stepped a long time ago before Luke. That was the case.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember I tell you, it kind of ironic that it comes from somewhere bloodline to put the balance in place. So there's a lot with how the Force operates on both ends of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
So we cannot negate that and just bypass that thing. When people do whatever, it let me know what kind of level of creativity they really have. The lack of balanced creativity when you're building something, they put to be balanced on both ends. That would make certain franchise iconic for what it is. But when people do, what if it did what it, then the franchise would have been done and over. That's just it. What the point of it? That's the logic behind it. You don't believe me? What would the rival to Star Wars? It's not Star Trek. You know that the whole entire franchise, everything's all about balance.
Mm-hmm.
But not to say about Star Wars, but the Star Trek franchise had to deal with the contingency based on how things played out. So this is why I say, this is why the fan lost out when you force a creator of a well-known franchise to sell it to the wrong people.
Yeah.
Do what you ask for, do what you get.
Yeah.
Same
All
thing
right.
about the election.
Let's get Paul's opinion here. Go ahead, Paul.
Well, the commentator, he did mention, and I forgot this. He mentioned a particular time when another opportunity for Luke to turn. So I mentioned two of them. I said the one, Empire Strikes Back, where Vader reveals who he is and he asks him to join him so they can rule the galaxy as father and son. And then at the point where he strikes down Vader, that was also an opportunity. Also, if he would have slain Vader, then he would have did the dark side. But there was another opportunity where this is where the rebel fleet, they did the surprise attack, but they knew the attack was coming and everyone's getting clipped off. And so they're before the Emperor's throne, and he goes with his lightsaber to strike Palpatine down, but then Vader blocks it, and then they start fighting. So there was like yet again another opportunity for him to turn at that particular time. Now, having said that, if he did at that time, I think he would have at some point he would have definitely surpassed Vader. Because again, I think Vader, just with his limitations, I just think that, you know, Luke would become too powerful and he wouldn't have the limitations of Force lightning. And that's another thing. I mean, he would have learned Force lightning pretty quickly, and that's just the one kryptonite for that Vader couldn't handle. Is that so I think that's something that would have definitely been a hindrance. And the fact that he didn't have the father-son relationship to where he even feared Vader like that. You know what I mean? Like if Vader did raise him, or if he did grow up with that, and he'd be like, okay, you know, have that kind of respect for his father, but he was just trying to get to know him. If anything, he was driven by compassion for Vader, not fear of Vader. Like, look, that's my dad or whatever. He didn't have that respect for him like that, but you know, he was motivated by love of his father. But I still think that, you know, certainly once he gets corrupted like that, I think he definitely would have passed Vader, and then you can then entertain the possibility of what would happen. Would Luke? Because I don't think Vader or Sidious ever would have turned Leia. Could Luke do it though? You know what I mean? And I think Luke, just like anything else, he would try to come off as being, I'm not going to the dark side. I'm bringing balance. Because again, the Force isn't about good; it's about balance. And so I'm trying to do things a little bit different. I got these powers and I'm trying to do it, but I need your help. So I think he would do it in a more seducing way. You kind of know Vader and Sidious. You kind of know where they're coming from. I think Luke, unless he was like going to be like corrupted by dark energy, you know what I mean? Like, you know what? Because the other thing with Sith Lords, right? They all become ugly at some point, right? Or at least they got an ugly side to it. Like they get morphed. Because they were saying even in Revenge of the Sith, when he's fighting Mace Windu and he's turning back the Force lightning on him, that wasn't a disfiguring. They were saying that's basically who Sidious was. He was just revealing himself at that particular time. So you can't even say that it was, you know, because Sith, they do have this ability to hide and to shield themselves and to give themselves a sort of comeliness that, you know, that masks their true nature, their true selves. So that we could have been seeing what Sidious looked like the whole time, because they just said that, you know, once you get that dark side energy, it just makes you ugly, and it just disfigures you. You get those Sith eyes, and you just become a not so pleasant, you know, person. So, somebody.
Oh,
Is that me?
What was that? Anyway, go ahead.
So I would think that's the you know, that's how I would see it. But yeah, so many opportunities that could have easily flipped the other way. Now, the other thing I would say is, I don't know if any of this stuff would have made a difference, because if you go by Jedi, the destruction of the Death Star would have been inevitable, right? Because once the shield, because even though that drama was happening within the Emperor's throne room, the battle on the outside was still going the way it was going. They still took out the generator. Deflect the shield was down. Lando and the Falcon and those guys still destroyed the Death Star. So unless those guys recognized, with all that fighting going on, that, hey, yeah, I know we're trying to convert Luke and everything, but we need to consider getting off this thing because the rebellion's going to blow it up. And so you very well could have had, and let's just say if they did get Luke at that particular time, would they have been able to get off? No, did he? Would they have been able to get off the Death Star if, because that, I think that was going to happen. So again, that, but we never kind of figured, it out. Luke barely got off. No, did he? He barely got off when before it blew up. So it definitely would have been it would have been interesting to see if those guys would have survived that, because you basically had all three of them there, and that would have been, that could have made it into who's going to be next. Leia would have been the only one left if those three perished on the Death Star, and then again, who's going to train her though? She would have definitely married Han, and they would have had kids or whatnot. But who would have developed the powers in Leia and her children in that scenario? So we got to factor that in too. That the Death Star destruction was inevitable. Would those guys have recognized that in time enough to get off the Death Star before it exploded?
That is a good one. Let me ask you this question. Another scenario that popped in my head. So, without Luke being the main hero of Rebels, excuse me, would they survive without a main hero?
Well, again, if you go by 6, I think it would have been a wash. I mean, the rebellion would have went on, right? Because they had all those generals. They had Mon Mothma. They had the General Akbar. I mean, they had Lando Calrissian. They had leaders. It wasn't like the rebellion was leaderless. All those folks, those former Republic folks who rebelled against Palpatine and the Empire, I think they still would have went on. Would they have lacked, miss having the wisdom of Leia and Luke and whatnot? That would have been a but yeah, that's the thing. Luke and Leia would have lived because they were on Endor. So they wouldn't have been leaderless. So no, I don't think that they necessarily would have needed Luke, and the heart of the Empire or the major portion would have been destroyed in that Battle of Endor. Because they turned the tide, they blew up the Death Star. There were so many resources that would have. The question would be then, who would lead the Empire? Now, again, the episode, the sequels, certainly gave you, the rise of the First Order and that thing and Snoke and all that, so that might have been the answer then. But I don't think either side would have been if I bring the sequels into it. We know that there was a First Order that came out, and other Force beings, good or bad, I think would have been part of the in the Expanse. But I think the Empire would have taken a much bigger blow because Sith, Sidious, and Vader would have been destroyed in the Death Star destruction.
David, got anything on this before we put on the next video?
I would say this. I think the Sith Lord knows very, very well. If they ever want to tilt the balance to their favor, the outcome could have been far worse than what it is. For example, in any type of storyline with good to evil, when the balance tipped too far to the end of the dark side, you force the balance to be considered to be almost broken, to be on the good side. So it's realized, okay, if we would have taken over Luke Skywalker, that means someone far more powerful than Luke Skywalker that came out of nowhere. And that guy could have been a wrecking ball. And the Force be solely behind that just to correct the imbalance that put in play. Because if you think about it, in every storyline, in every fictional franchise, it's always something that tilted about too far off, and it created an anomaly that it's based on your own mistake you made or your own reckoning. So imagine, okay, Luke Skywalker joined the dark side. That's great. That's fine. And we have someone who's not from the bloodline, but can be a cousin to the bloodline, and the Force is heavy on his side to the point whereby the Seth felt it and like, okay, we have a problem now. The Force has created will be our downfall. There's nowhere else stopping it. Either we like it or we don't. What do you think could have happened to the Empire? The Empire could have been obliterated if that person was trained properly in the shadow and you cannot sense it.
Yeah, but you probably would have had some sort of civil war, right? Because again, he had.
Yes, we could have a civil war.
Yeah,
have a civil war, but it would have been far worse than what he had.
But remember, guys, like during the Great Jedi Civil War 2, is this first or two? Whatever, it was a Great Civil War Jedi. That's when the Sith and Jedi finally split. They were homeboys. They were under the same group at one point, under the same roof, breaking bread and everything. But they were seeing different ideals. Like I mentioned at the beginning of my stream, like I know this is not politics, but more history. Like Republicans and Democrats were under one party. They had beef. They split up. Same concept with Jedis and Sith. They were under the same roof. They start beefing. The war happened, and they split.
Yeah, I'm just saying. But just the way the Empire was constructed, right? And I know there have been books that have kind of gone into this. I haven't delved into a lot of them, but the Empire, it's almost can be described like, you guys remember the old Star Trek episodes, the Mirror universe.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that? So you had like the bad Spock, the bad Kirk, and all bad Uhura and Sulu and all those guys. Mm-hmm. It was almost like that. It was like everybody's looking to advance by stabbing somebody else in the back, right? So I'm just saying, so without Palpatine, he kind of held everything together, and Vader made sure that, yeah, these two may not like each other, but look, for the sake of the Empire, you guys are better act up or he'll take both of you guys out. That was like the environment that he created. But now you're going to have competing factions where the whole idea, and I think Sidious wanted it this way. It's almost like, again, delete it or be deleted. You know what I mean? So if you want to rise through the ranks in the Empire, you need to be ruthless. You need to be obedient. You need to be a snitch. It's like all of the things to undermine somebody else. If you want, because again, if you want the attention of Sidious, he needs some people who are going to be just as, if there's no good people in that code, like, can we name a good leader in the Empire? A nice person. I don't think so, because the culture that he created didn't foster niceness. It was like, who's going to be most effective? Who can I use most effectively? Who's going to be number one? Who's going to be ruthless enough to do my bidding? In order to do that, you got to show some ruthlessness yourself. But I don't think in the whole Star Wars canon has there ever been a Empire person that you actually liked.
No.
Even in the Star Wars, what was the animated series? Who's the guy with the blue skin and red eyes?
Oh shit! What's his name?
Thrawn. I think
something like that. Yeah,
Thrawn. They're interesting, but you don't root for them.
I think that if I had to pick somebody, it would be probably the spin-off of one of the games, Star-Lord, whatever his name was. He was technically the bad guy by turning to good eventually, but maybe him only. But that's like, but he was going to turn anyway.
Right. I'm just saying, but there's very few people you have. If I did have somebody, it would have been, not Piet. It would have been the guy who in fact, he just died this past year. He was in Empire, and he was in Return of the Jedi. What's his name? But he was like a loyal, faithful soldier. Like you didn't not like him. He didn't do anything that was dishonorable. At least in the ranks, he was a faithful soldier. but he didn't. But again, it wasn't like you rooted for him, you know.
I know the one actor died on the 30th this past and he was like he played in a couple of roles, like not like a main role, but he was like in the first three movies. But he was up there in age too, so I'm sorry. So I'm gonna play the last video and we're gonna start closing up after that, okay?
Yeah, Piet. Yeah, Admiral Piet.
Yeah,
Admiral
there you
Piet.
go. That's the name.
Yeah.
All right, let's play the last video really fast.
What if Luke joined Vader on Cloud City? Luke Skywalker stood at the edge of the platform on Cloud City. Vader reached out his hand and said, "Join me, and together we can rule the galaxy." This time, Luke didn't say no. He took his father's hand. The war changed instantly. Luke never warned the rebels. Han was never rescued. The Emperor was cautious but curious about Vader's new apprentice. Luke trained in the dark side, but he held on to parts of himself. He began questioning the Empire's goals, quietly influencing missions. Over time, Vader and Luke grew close, sharing ideas about change. Together, they confronted the Emperor, but not with violence. Instead, they took control from within, shaping the galaxy into something new. What do you think would have happened? Like and subscribe for more.
Go ahead, David. You're shaking your head. Go ahead. Go ahead.
This is why I said what I said. That logic idea is still flawed on multiple levels. So there's no in account of your local creative idea why he created what he created. It's like you want to put your own spin to it, and even though the spin is not even logical. That's why I said I don't have faith in fans when they don't have a creativity. Everything is all lean sided, is lopsided. And they don't look at the idea because multiple flawed into the place. This is why they got what they got now with the Star Wars franchise. This is the obvious truth. Because with all the bunch of what if Luke would have done this, then it kind of like going again to the writing credibility, how he created his story. This is why when it comes to a lot of these movies, I'm a very tough and brutal critic. If what don't make no sense, I'm going to accept it. It may sound like a cool idea, but it mentioned a lot of people behind it. Because if, like I say, if Luke would have done such a thing, there's a loophole in play, float on the inside, or it would have done from the outside. It would have never worked. It's why when it comes to storytelling is very critical. Very, very, very critical. It had to make sense. And none of those ideas make sense at all, to be honest with you. No, it will never work.
Well, I don't know if it would never work. I think certainly it was the most. It would have been the most opportune time because of all the things that Luke was going to imagine in that moment. You're facing the most feared person out there. You're losing. You got your hand cut off, and then he just drops this bomb on you, like, "Oh, I'm your daddy." And then, in that moment, not ever knowing his father, and you saw even in the first movie, he was like, "I wish I'd known him." Like, he always longed to know who his father was, and then Ben hypes him up like he was just this great warrior and everything, best star pilot in the galaxy and all that kind of stuff. I could understand that if in that moment he would have succumbed to, not because he wanted to be rule the galaxy with his father, but it's just to know him. So I could honestly see that. Now, could he, just driving the logic here, could he have kept an aspect of himself that didn't quite fully, turn itself over to the dark side, and could he have used that in an effort to sort of, restore Anakin Skywalker back while at the same time destroying the Emperor. Because again, I think both of them would have agreed that the Emperor, if this means us joining forces could end the Emperor, it may at least be worth a shot to kind of go in and try to destroy the enemy from the inside. I'm just saying
and that's the part that people keep overlooking. And that was the case. Remember, the Dark Lord and the Jedi have connected to the Force. They're the high chair the Force what I sensed that long ago, because in some kind of way, the Force is like a entity that whereby you can tap in so deeply and let you master it to that level. You can almost see things happen before it happens. In the case. So
Right.
there's a huge chance the Emperor would have noticed already. We're waiting for how to see how things played out.
Right.
So
But
that's what I'm saying.
even with that, I get, and in fact I think I brought that point up earlier, that in the scenario where if Vader would have raised Luke from birth, I don't see how he could have kept that from the Emperor all those years.
Bingo.
Because again, he sent him on these missions where he may not come back. It's like, I don't know if I want to go on this mission. I got a little son back home that I'm raising, and I want to see him grow up. So would he have been so willing to go on these death missions knowing that he had a son at home? So I can understand Palpatine being as smart and intuitive as he is, that he would have figured that out. But one thing that we've always seen in the Star Wars universe, especially in the cartoons, the animated series, everybody always underestimated Palpatine, but it didn't stop them from their plans and doing what they did. So imagine a scenario where, okay, Luke joins them, they grow up and everything, and they think they're going to take him on, and then they think they got Palpatine, but then Palpatine knows the whole thing. Yeah, I've been watching all. I knew all this before you guys ever did. I knew that. And you just like, and then it's like, now the thing is how we get ourselves out of this. Because again, you saw in the animated where you saw Maul, I guess the resurrected Maul and his brother tried to take on the Emperor, and they just realized, oh, he's a lot more powerful than we thought he was. We thought we had we've been planning and plotting all this time. We thought we had him, and oh snap! Nah, he's the real deal.
The same thing could happen with what's called it. When they attacked him, multiple times with the Jedis, they think he was just nobody, and all of a sudden they're getting slaughtered.
Yeah, and that piece I didn't like. I thought he took the Jedi too easily in that fight. But yeah, the four Jedi, including Mace, come to arrest him, and he just takes 3-4 out just like that. I mean, I'm
but
like,
here's the thing, Obi-Wan. When Obi-Wan knew what was going to happen, knew that they were trying to, but Darth Vader was trying to kill him. He allowed it to happen because he understands he's no longer part of that particular realm anymore. So the thing is, people not comprehending this. You're dealing with an entity. I keep calling it entity. When you get to a high level of mastery, that's what that thing really is. Because there's time whereby even when Obi-Wan was going, he still had a projection of himself somewhere else. Whatever to communicate with Luke. To explain things to him. Didn't Yoda did the same exact thing too? So
possible, but listen, but hang on. My only thing is, again, I'm not disagreeing with you that again he is very formidable and he would have used some sort of insider clairvoyance to find things out. But again, even if you thought he was good, his master was even better. The problem was he caught him at the right time, right? He was drunk. They had a celebration or whatever. He drank a little bit too much. He was just sitting there, and basically Sidious was about to leave the room. And it was in the moment. Like if you read the whole thing with his I forget who his Plagueis.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was like a spur of the moment. Like he had no intention that day that, okay, this is going to be the time I'm going to take him out. He just caught Plagueis in a moment of weakness where he had too much to drink. And then he just said, oh, maybe now is the time to do it. And that's what he did. And he put the force lightning on him and eventually just took him out. But I'm just saying. So I'm not disputing that it would be a very formidable task. But I'm saying within the storylines themselves, that did not stop certain people from going after him. He just always came out on top. Could he slip up? Or could you have an ace in the hole? Maybe Leia. You don't know. I mean, maybe something in there where it's like, again, that moment of truth where he finds out exactly, and he just tells them, I knew about you guys the whole time. Y'all ain't fool me at all. I knew you were raising Luke and whatnot. And now I get a chance. I can take you, Vader. Now I can take you out. And now thank you for giving me this Jedi that you trained, or the Sith that you trained. Boom, force lightning you. You get out. Hey, Luke, now I'm your master. And then they could put a twist in there, be like, oh, hold up. We got something for you. And that could be Leia. It could be some other angle that they could have added in there, whatever. Again, but that's the
But
thing.
it had to be within the bloodline because that's what the storyline looked
That's
like
what I'm
based
saying.
on the
So
bloodline.
you could introduce something like that. That's like, oh man, and you're thinking it's like it's the climax of the movie.
Yeah. So, in my opinion, if he would turn, I would agree with this guy. I think Cloud City would be the perfect time because he still hasn't mastered his powers. His
Oh, and he was
mindset,
vulnerable. He
his mindset is weak. That'll be a perfect fucking time, I think.
exactly.
But before we go, because we're running out of time, we got to get our final thoughts. David, I was asked a request, and I have to follow it. People think you have the best Darth Vader voice to do "I am your father." Could you just do it for the audience, please?
My voice.
Yes.
Let me see.
Not
God, your father. That deep enough? Or I need to go deeper?
Paul, I think he kind of nailed it. What do you think?
Not bad. Not bad
Yeah.
at all.
All right, Paul. David, you want to go first? Final thoughts. Paul, you're last, and I will go to
I'll
second.
make it. I'll make it very, very quick. This franchise, the Star Wars franchise, need to be highly respected because it's one thing to be a fan of this franchise, but it's another thing to respect the greater idea. That's why we have one show where we go in a little too hard on certain prospects about it. It was a very unique conversation because it forced me to go into the logic of things. I was like, I need to see how the creator was saying things and see what are the variables would have been allowed. On that note, good conversation, but let's have respect for the creator idea. Let's have respect for what he built and respect the fact that he built something that y'all could have not even built in the first place. On that note, that is my final thought.
Yeah, this was fun. Certainly Star Wars, especially like I said, within the original canon. Certainly I like to get down with that. And yeah, I mean, certainly possibilities were there. As I said earlier, there was multiple opportunities for Luke to make a turn within the movie franchise. There were so many chances there. So I could certainly see a scenario, but again, clever writing and looking like long term, like almost like you're playing chess versus checkers. You might have been able to do something with it, but I think at the end of the day, because he is such a hero archetype, um, I think they could have did something where it's like you think he's in the dark side or whatever, but he would find a way to come out of it or be redeemed from it. And it's interesting because and want to bring up this point earlier, you can almost make a point that he might have had a little flirtation with the dark side, just the way he fought. If you guys saw The Mandalorian and the episodes where Luke shows up, I mean, he's doing stuff his dad did. He's like crushing robots and doing all kinds of things that his father did, Anakin, when he turned to the dark side. So maybe he has had some exposure, just as other Jedi have. I mean, Mace Windu, he flirted with the dark side a little bit, learning as much as he could without falling into it. Again, that's why his lightsaber was purple, because again, he was able to balance between the red and the blue. So it's possible that Luke, this isn't to say that he may not go for deeper understanding, but the question is, would he ever go all the way in? I couldn't see if he did it. But but if he did, I think there'd be some sort of redemptive arc that they would have to write into the story to bring him back from it. So, but good combo, and yeah, but let guys come up with ideas. I know Star Wars theory. I know that guy. He does a lot of videos on Star Wars and what if scenarios and whatnot. So this has certainly been a thing as of late.
Are you talking
But I
about
appreciate, yeah,
Star Wars Theory?
yeah,
Yeah, I actually been trying to reach out to him. I'm very crossing my fingers, kissing whatever I need to kiss. Hopefully, he's at Comic Con
mm,
because is one of the biggest cons. He does has a Star Wars saber company that sells sabers now.
yeah,
So I know he does a lot of cons, but I'm not sure. I did reach out to him on their website, Instagram, webpage, whatever it was.
yeah,
Asked that question. They never got back to me.
right.
Let's see. Hopefully we get lucky and maybe we can have a conversation with the guy. Maybe he says like he might tell us go fuck off, or he might say yay or not. We'll find out. But let's do a quick schedule update. Before we do that, I do agree 100% with all this. This is why this is a hangout. This is a fun episode. I actually had a blast with this one. So tomorrow night we will be going over Energy of the Gray Area. So it should be a excited one. We're off on Monday, back on Tuesday. I haven't posted, but the topic is, David, you're going to grind right now when I tell you the topic. Should women pay child support? That's the topic we're going with. Wow, David didn't make a word. I'm surprised. He usually
No,
grunts when he
because
doesn't like something.
that is already happening right now. Because I think there's law being implemented already in Texas and other southern states whereby things are.
Oh, hold it for Tuesday, please. All right.
Okay.
All right. We had a fun night. Let's keep it on the fun note. All right.
All right.
All right. So on Wednesday, you and Wilder will be going over, and good luck with this one because you're going to start a war on this one. Superman versus Goku, the ultimate crossover class. Good luck. You're going to need that one.
I will have plenty of luck on my side because there's a lot of fundamental factor behind it. This is why I say what I say.
Oh yeah. It'll be a fun. It will be definitely a fun conversation. It's just,
But ladies and gentlemen,
I
if
know
you're a
you guys,
comic
that's
book
why I said
fan and you're a fan of Superman, bring your beef, bring your logic on Wednesday so we can knock down a couple of men. That's what I'm going to tell you.
yeah. So on Thursday, we will be going over paper to paycheck. Paul, you want to give you a briefing on that?
Well, actually, no. We're actually going to be going over specifically resume. So resume writing and cover letter. So the first episode we looked at job searching, and I think that was a good episode. I mean, Coach, he gave us some good insight. Go into that website so you can get trends and jobs and whatnot. Applying for jobs. Now we're going to get into the resume writing and the cover letter portion of it. The next show after that is then going to cover interview skills. So we'll kind of go through the job search process
Correct.
end to end, and then we're going to get into networking. How do you get your name?
I should apologize. I didn't read the whole title. That's my fault. My bad on that. It was the whole title is paper to paycheck, crafting the perfect resume and cover letter. So and so on next Saturday, I do have Marvel vs. DC. I will be rescheduling that. I will be putting a replay on for you guys. Me, David, and Paul will be at Comic-Con. So make sure you come say what's up with us. Trust me, he's not that mean in person. I promise you guys. He's more like a teddy bear. Don't worry. Yeah, I will have his treats with him. He will be friendly. I promise you guys that. But definitely come check us out if you're going to be in the area. If you're at Comic-Con, you want to meet up with, please reach me an email, David or Paul, one of us. We will make time for you guys. Trust me, we will make time. If you're at Comic-Con, you want to come say hi and just say, shoot the breeze. On Sunday, we will have a show. But I will also be at Strasbourg Greek Orthodox Church for the Greek Festival. If you guys want to stop by, grab some gyros, grab some, souvlaki, some other Greek food I prepped out, and you want to say hi, I will be there. Father Costantino is going to be, he's been on the show. If you want to check out the church, a little tour, talk to him, he's going to be there. So make sure those other events are coming up, and we will have a show also on next Sunday. Except that's the most updates I have. I think there was one more thing. No, it's not. Okay. David, you have anything on your end really fast? David. Oh, that's what I was going to say to you guys. The full I've been working on the next several months of schedule. I will be uploading most of the stuff, so be patient. The stuff will be coming up. I'm sorry, David. You got any final thoughts? I mean, any last comments? You do. Okay. No. Paul,
I'm
you
good.
good? All right, guys. As always, this was the Spartan Skinner, where I am the Spartan. He is Black David. He is the president. And as always, stay fresh, stay safe, and I'll see you guys on the next one.